Welcome to the Nejo Chuan podcast. My name is Isaac Kamens. This is a bi-weekly podcast where my friend Jess O'Brien and I discuss internal martial arts, Qigong, and meditation. This week we continue our discussion of the Wu style of Tai Chi Chuan, talking about the healing aspects of Tai Chi from article with Bruce Francis back in 1987. Then we continue our discussion of Baiwa's book and the 13 songs of Tai Chi from the Tai Chi classics. This gets into a little bit of philosophical discussion about Tai Chi, but also we talk in the extended episode a lot more about the application of Tai Chi as martial arts and to other things, and it goes on for almost an extra hour. So if you want to hear the longer discussion, go over to the Patreon. You can join up and listen to that, as well as interviews, extra bonus episodes, and much, much more. So Happy New Year. Thanks for listening. Take care of yourselves and be well.
In today's episode of the Nejo Chuan podcast, we're going to continue our look at the Wu style of Tai Chi and wrap up things with some of the healing stories as told by B.K. Francis in his 1987 article in Tai Chi Magazine. A personal experience of the Wu style's healing ability that we did part of last time. And so we'll just review this a little bit. He talks about it in his books as well, but this is kind of the first time that he put it in print. It's 1987, so like he's in his 30s and is just coming back from China after doing all his training, and so this is kind of one of his first articles extolling the virtues of Tai Chi as a healing martial art, as a healing method. And that was big for him because he had some pretty major injuries in his 30s that he felt like Tai Chi was critical to helping him heal. So he starts here by saying, in September 1984, I began studying Wu style Tai Chi Chuan with Liu Hongzhi, who had taught me Xingyi and Bagua back in 1981. Liu had slipped on some ice in 1982, which left him flat on his back for 9 months with broken ribs and a traumatized back. So wow, this has some interesting stuff in it. So first he says that they focus mostly on Xingyi and Bagua in 1981. So it sounds like when he first got to Master Liu's house, he really wanted to focus on Xingyi and Bagua. So that tells you a little something that was he was fired up about Bagua at that time.
Yeah, he didn't go to Liu to learn Tai Chi or Qigong.
Right.
He went there to learn Xingyi and Bagua.
Interesting. But after he got injured, that's when Master Liu switched him over to doing Tai Chi at that point.
Yeah, and I think that was more Liu's idea, not his.
Probably. I mean, I hear that because Xingyi and Bagua are harder to find in some ways and faster and funner in some ways, especially when you're younger. And then Master Liu broke his ribs and hurt his back really bad when he slipped on the ice. I've heard that story goes around every once in a while that
I always heard it as he hurt his hips. I don't know. I don't know what the.
And he broken ribs too. That's pretty. Yeah, but you could fall on the ice and screw yourself up pretty bad in
especially
Beijing winter
in your 80s. I mean,
right. Here's a guy who, so he's 79 at that point. So, yeah, that's not good. So Master Liu was almost 80 years old at the time. Liu told me that he'd never seen a doctor been seen by a doctor in his life. And he said that he completely healed his back by himself. Liu's relatives confirmed the 9-month stay in bed and added that they had never seen him go to a doctor for anything. Which is, I mean, it was a time of great poverty as well when shit was hella bad. So healthcare is probably hard to get.
Some of that might not have been by choice.
Right. But also, as we've often said, his family had been in the medical profession for a long time. So he had been trained as a traditional Chinese physician to a certain extent. So he knew healing methods, presumably. But he laid there in bed for 9 months, healing himself.
And it takes a long time for ribs and things like that to heal. So,
damn. But that's saying something if you're able to recover from, a serious blow like that. So Kumar says here, I wanted to continue studying Xingyi and Bagua with Liu, but he insisted that their hard energy techniques were not appropriate for me at that time since I was injured. So you're right. He came in the door like, let's get back into Xingyi. Although these Shingi and Bagua techniques would make me stronger, he said, this newfound strength would mask my injury and could cause it to become worse, so that when I would get older, my back would give me a lot of trouble. So I think that's a truism of internal martial arts, that you always have to go back to your weakest link, kind of. So if like you overcome an injury by just strengthening everything around it, that's good, but you still haven't fully resolved what, maybe the joint needs some additional help that you're sort of skipping over. So you're going to eventually have to go back and deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, making yourself strong enough to deal with an injury is not the same thing as fixing the injury. You can muscle your way through a bad knee, but that's not fixing the bad knee.
Right? It's the minute that musculature dips down a little bit, the knee injury will return.
Yeah, or you just get older. It's not gonna. You're not gonna be able to maintain it. So,
well, your strength naturally.
The same thing goes for an internal type of illness that you might have a virus or a bacteria thing in your body that if you're strong and healthy you won't notice it, but if your energy gets low and you get sick or something, that other bacteria or virus will kind of pop its head up or whatever. So I mean there's all sorts of things like that where this is one of the big advantages of quote unquote preventative practices, right? That doing qigong, doing tai chi, it's a big part of it is that you're addressing the things, you're doing things that would address illness even when you don't have an illness. So it's like, if there was some little hidden thing in there, you're getting it without even knowing it.
Like in sports, sometimes they'll say you do prehab, where like you do your rehabilitation exercises before you get injured, so that perhaps you've got less chance of getting injured. It prepares you, it presets you up.
Yeah, I mean, I remember in one of the Chen Man-cheng books, he talks about, one of his students talks about how Cheng would work on them and, and how that extra little energy would keep certain illnesses and things at bay. And that when that went away, though, those things were still there. So yeah,
So like the article, he says, the first law of the internal martial arts is that your practice must be good for your body. Liu told me I had to learn soft energy to heal my body, and only after that could I practice hard energy techniques. He said he had used Wu-style Tai Chi Chuan to heal his own back. So coincidentally, Liu had used Tai Chi to heal his recent back or hip or ribs or whatever you want to call it injury from his fall. So now Kumar shows up. He's like, all right, we'll use Wu-style to heal your back as well.
Yeah, I mean, basically that Liu had the experience of using Wu-style to heal himself and then transfer that to Bruce. And I have to say from my experience, like, I've done the same thing. So it works, but it's, it's a method inside of this Tai Chi form. It's not necessarily the Tai Chi form. So I think it's...
So not every Tai Chi system is going to have. That's why he specialized in this Wu style that would.
Well, right. Not even every Wu style necessarily would have that ability.
Pretty specific.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to do it a certain way to get certain results. I mean, he keeps talking about soft energy. Like when I first came around looking for soft energy, I wanted to use it to slap and beat people with, and it works hella good for that. Like, but yet. You can also apply that to healing. Maybe hard energy doesn't necessarily apply to healing. It applies to strength, where soft energy applies to healing.
It applies to certain types of healing. I mean, there are, just to keep it simple, there are yin deficiencies and yang deficiencies, right? So the more often than not, it's not just a lack of strength, but that is a thing that, there are rarely, in some cases, all you need to do is get a little bit stronger.
Right. Like Sun Ludong was asthmatic as a kid or whatever. And by learning hard energy of Xingyi, toughened up and got strong.
So that the classic case is the sort of the weak child, right?
Right.
If you have a weak child who's getting sick all the time and, getting beat up at school. You teach them martial arts, you give them some yang energy, and they get healthy and strong. And then, but that's
later in life. You turn to the soft energy when you start getting fucked up.
I was gonna say the yang stuff. I mean, probably till you're about 30, it maxes out. Sense. And the yin stuff is more efficient. It does it quicker, and it does it in a way that sticks better. I don't know how to put it, but like your body accepts it a little bit easier. So the idea that if you have a bad back, yanking on that bad back, poking on that bad back, doing yang things to it, can help certain aspects of it. Might make it feel better, externally or whatever. But it's the yin stuff of actually being able to go inside your spine and release the thing that's stuck. That's actually going to get rid of the problem, not just fix the symptom.
Exactly. Makes sense. I guess I first started encountering soft energy by opening the energy gates with you and with Kumar and other people there, and like really taking the time to let go of like my arms and my shoulders and my, letting my waist swing and just getting that fluidity. Then when you strike somebody with that, all you have to do is do the swing, and you don't have to clench anything, and your arm just whips out like a chain and gives them a smack.
Yeah, I mean, the real thing of the soft energy and energy gates is the standing and dissolving part of it. But that transfers over to swatting, swinging your arms and whacking somebody. But this was when he talked about the fire and water method meditation stuff, is basically the same, sort of parallel, where it's like you have a yang way of doing it and you have a yin way of doing it. And so again, in the what Bruce calls the water method, you use this external dissolving process as your primary mechanism, right? And that is about the most yin thing you can do, because all it is essentially holding your body relatively straight and then just trying to relax everything, right? So this idea of I'm not trying to create energy, I'm just trying to release it. Right? Where yang,
that's awfully soft, and
you're trying to create energy and move it. So Tai Chi is composed of both, but by far, I think for most people, the yin one is the harder to grasp.
And the most valuable.
Yeah, in some ways.
I mean, you can get hard energy in a lot of places, but soft energy, in my experience, is harder to find.
It's the unique, the special sauce, if you will, of these internal arts.
Which is why so many Chinese martial arts school are Hung Gar plus Tai Chi, or Shaolin plus Tai Chi, or Bagua plus Tai Chi. Like, they need each other, kind of,
Well, and
if
that's
you want to be able to spar, you better do some Xingyi and Bagua.
I mean, I remember, Vince Black, one of the times I met Vince Black, I was 19 or something like that. And I was very into Xingyi at the time. And he made the point that, if you're doing a lot of Xingyi, you have to do something like Tai Chi or meditation or, some yin thing to balance it out.
Yeah.
And this is coming from like the most Xingyi guy I've ever met, and it was like, all right, I guess there's a value to that yin stuff.
Right.
At that age, I was like, I was like, I had no interest in softness. It was more about if they tell me I got to do the soft stuff so I can get better at the Xingyi. Okay, fine, I'll do.
I guess it's maybe how an MMA gym might have yoga also that you do as rehab. Maybe
that's
something like that. I wonder if someday there'll be like a Thai boxing school that'll add Tai Chi to the curriculum for all the 50 plus people to add, to soothe.
I mean, I'm sure it's out there somewhere already, but
it would be a nice fit. I mean, Tai Chi pretty much clicks with everybody.
No, and this is, I mean, a lot of people will take ideas from Tai Chi and use them, and not take the whole thing, because you don't need the whole thing if you just want to get one little aspect of it. So it might just be the loose arms, or turning from your waist, or keeping your spine straight, because all of these things, I mean, if you do any physical activity long enough, you figure out at least some of this stuff. Frank Allen's line about, if you want to see, internal power, find a 60-year-old roofer, because you see those, guys in their 50s and 60s who are still carrying, big
heavy loads,
rolls of tar up onto a roof, and,
right.
bending over all day long. I mean,
you better be efficient or you're going to die.
You can do that externally for a little while, but that's not something you can maintain, to old age without some kind of understanding of your body. So I think that, the advantage of the Neja Chuan is that it's acknowledged that it exists, and two, you start training it from a very early stage in your progression. It's not something you get to at the end of your training. Like most hard styles, quote unquote, if you practice them long enough, you end up kind of doing them soft, right? I mean, that not soft not as soft as Tai Chi, but that they figure out a certain element of smoothness and flow and internal connection.
Right.
But that's, again, it's like there's a difference between figuring it out after 30 years and starting to train it from day one.
Yeah, of course. Well, and Tai Chi has that hardness over time of, so a long-time Tai Chi person has a heaviness and a structural integrity that you could say would relate to hard power or strength or whatever, but like they're super hard to move, and they're very centered and grounded and all that. Whereas at first doing Tai Chi, you might be light and fluffy, but over time, if you stick with it for a while, you'll start getting hella grounded. If
you can do the yang aspects of Tai Chi, you can be as hard as a Muay Thai person or a Xingyi person, or, I've told this story before. I mean, the first time I met Bob Tangora, it was not a soft experience. Guy was slamming me around. I'm like, okay, this is Tai Chi. Like, what the fuck? I thought this was supposed to be gentle and soft. Because there is that element of Tai Chi. It has a hard side to it. We talked last time about the percentages, right? That Chin style being the most, maybe like 80-20 or something. Yang style being 50-50, and then Wu style being 80-20 in the other direction, right? That most of what your emphasis is on one or the other, or it can be split down the middle. It's just kind of a it's a preference in one sense.
Right. Makes sense. Okay, so the next part of the article. After a month or so of studying Wu style with Liu, my back pain began to diminish. 2 years later, my back became more or less free of pain, and it continues to improve day by day. My middle back pain has completely disappeared, and my lower back is virtually cured with only occasional twinges. I can tell you, I am really grateful that the continuous low back pain I was suffering from has all gone now.
Yeah, I mean, I can attest to that. For lower back pain.
Yeah, no doubt. All in all, I have to say that Wu style Taiji Chuan is superlatively effective for curing the damage my body sustained from a car accident. You cannot imagine how fantastic it is to be free from the specter of permanent back pain unless you have had it. I have personally experienced the benefits of Wu style soft energy techniques for back and joint problems. In addition, I have seen many people who have had all manner of internal diseases cured. Thus, I would say that the healing fame of the Wu style is well justified. Considering the great need in the West for ways to release stress and learn how to relax, I believe the Wu style of Taiji Chuan is really useful because it promotes both physical and mental health. There you go, 1987.
Yep.
This was the beginning of the whole not beginning, but this is when the Tai Chi movement really got cooking.
Yeah, I mean, I think Tai Chi had been around in the States for a long time by the 80s, but there was a certain, um,
It hit mainstream in the 80s.
yeah, I don't
And
know. I was
now,
going to say, I
yeah.
don't know if Tai Chi ever was mainstream.
No, it is. It's still to this day mainstream because you
But,
see so many versions of it. And I also think that Tai Chi influenced our exercise paradigm in general, right? Everybody started to pick up at least a little sense of maybe not over stressing, like back in the day, it was like run till your knees burst. But then, I think Tai Chi helped influence the thing of, well, maybe going a little slower or taking a day off or whatever. You know what I mean? Like a
well,
little
yeah, I
sense of
mean,
relaxation filtered into the mainstream a little.
that's where I was saying earlier about, some of these ideas
Yeah.
sort of crept into the lexicon, if you will. But
Right.
I think it was another 10 years or so before, um, if you said to the average Joe, I do Tai Chi, that they didn't, think you were talking about a Korean
Right.
martial art where you did a lot of kicking.
Right. And I mean, where are we now? Like I feel like we reached a point where X number of people are doing Tai Chi and we kind of just sort of stayed there.
The staying power of Tai Chi has never really been about numbers as much as it's been about there's a consistent group of people that seem to always get that there's a benefit to doing this softer stuff. And, lots of, I think, more modern, exercise things have started to understand the idea that there's importance to, relaxation and stretching and things like this. Well, I mean, I can speak from, my own training is I had scoliosis, and I can tell you straight up, most Tai Chi teachers aren't going to be able to tell you how to fix your scoliosis.
Right.
That's not part of what Tai Chi is, but it is part of what Leo taught Bruce. So, there's a piece of it.
Right. Each school is going to have its specialties. All right. Well, let's get back to the 13 songs of Tai Chi Chuan from the Tai Chi classics as interpreted by Bai Hua.
All right.
Yeah, this one's a pretty interesting set. Like it's so far, how do you see it as different from the previous ones? I think this one, I mean, they're all pretty profound, but the 13 songs one seems to be putting a lot of stuff together at once. Like, I don't know.
Well, I mean, my personal,
stacking up concepts like all together.
yeah, I mean, my personal skeptical thought is that this is written way later, and this is
Right. A
summation of
summation.
all the things that you want to do when you do Tai Chi, and yeah, so it's kind of like a list,
gathering and condensing kind of is a good
yeah,
impression.
yeah, exactly. It's a condensing of the previous, the long drawn out Tai Chi classics where you have all this flowery imagery and stuff, and this is just kind of getting down to the nuts and bolts of it.
To sort of cut and paste everything into one doc, kind of. So here's what it says: the whole body remains quiet all the time, and the movement is caused by the touch of detecting the enemy's changes. The movement and quietness of these 13 postures embody its magic. So Bai Hua starts explaining that. So he wants to unpack this thing of, you stay quiet, but you only react when the enemy touches you. He says stillness is formed by Zong Ding, which is derived from the Qi Ji Guanchuan coordinated body movement and dominated by the waist with the whole body united. So that's a lot in one sentence. Like, so this thing's talking about the whole body remains quiet at all times. So he says the stillness is formed by the Zong Ding, the central channel or central center line or whatever you want to call it, Zong Ding. In our school, we call it central channel, which is derived from, the whole coordinating of the whole body and connecting to the waist and uniting the whole body.
I mean, so those two phrases, the way Bruce translates them is coordinated body movement is from posture to posture, the internal energy is unbroken, and dominated by the waist and moved by the whole is one part moves, all parts move, one part stops, all parts stops. So you have these two basic concepts, right? That there's an internal energy that is running through everything as you move. And the other one is that when you move, all of you moves as one unit, not broken into chunks.
So next thing he says, when your Jin, your 8 directional force is being hindered, he says it's necessary to use the method of 4 ounces defeats 1,000 pounds, and use the Zongding of the Dantian to adjust the balance of the motion while taking the opponent's flexion and extension as my flexion and extension.
Okay, so if I don't have my body in the right position, then I can't just push through it. I can't release my Jing yet. That there's a physical movement of the external body that is necessary to like reconnect to that center before you can then release again. So there's what you do if you have it, and then there's how you get back to it if you don't have it.
Well, it's like, again, the Tai Chi obsession with there's movement inside stillness and there's stillness inside movement.
Right.
So if you're moving, you got to maintain the stillness inside. If you're still and standing there, you've got to maintain the movement within and be prepared to unleash the force on contact. So he ends the paragraph by saying, therefore, Zongding, central equilibrium, as we call it, is relatively more stable. This is stillness in motion. The reciprocal process of motion and stillness is the same as the principle that yin and yang are mutually rooted in the Tai Chi diagram. So reiterating that shifting the balance, motion and stillness, this is exactly what yin and yang is being talked about in Tai Chi. Well, T.T. Liang breaks it down in his way, but his translation of just the phrase is, inwardly tranquil, one responds to a forceful action while maintaining an unruffled attitude. Manifest your inscrutable techniques to accord with an opponent's changing actions. So you're inwardly tranquil and you stay unruffled no matter how hard the other guy's coming at you. And that's a very Tai Chi approach to things. And then your techniques are inscrutable while they're making their actions. Whenever they change, you act and they can't see it coming, basically. So there's a sense of magic here. There's a sense of surprise here. There's a sense of the opponent inscrutability. The opponent is like completely in the dark. And as
that's a very poetic way of putting it. I think of it more as they shit their pants. Right? Because in a sense, this is the idea, how we always talk about the door opening as you go to push it, right? That idea.
And you stumble through.
If you're thrusting at that door with with 1,000 pounds, and right as you make contact with it, it flies open and you fall on your face. In that moment, as you're falling, before you hit the ground, you're panicking. You're going, oh my God, what's happening? And that's kind of, in Tai Chi, you're trying to engender that reaction in the other person, because that's when they're the most vulnerable. So you have this thing of getting them to quote unquote fall into you.
So Fu Zhongwen, the student of Yang Cheng Fu, has a book translated by Louis Swain. We called it Mastering Yang Style Taiji Chuan. It says, in the midst of stillness, one comes in contact with movement, moving as though remaining still. According with one's opponent, the transformations appear wondrous. So he uses wondrous as opposed to magic or inscrutability. So that's that shock you're talking about. And then he says, moving as though remaining still. That's a nice way to put it.
Well, because think about what happens, again, it's like, what happens when you see a magic trick, right? There's that, that sort of moment of, right? And that's kind of again, it's like the happier version of going, oh, fuck,
right.
But it's
free falling feeling.
It's the same reaction. It's you freeze, right? That whether you're freezing because you're in awe of something, first time you see the Grand Canyon or something, right? Or you're in awe because you're shitting your pants because you're about to get hit by a bus. The result is the same thing. You froze, right? That you have to start getting this attitude of, well, if I get pushed, I come back, and if I push, I return,
restabilize.
Yeah, and you're not getting fixated on one or the other,
or flustered. That again, that's T.T. Liang hits on that sense of, I'm just chill. Like whatever comes, I'll deal with. I'm not gonna jump forward or lurch back. I'm gonna stay in this position until I need to move. And
I mean, Bruce would always say that, you're gonna get hit no matter what. And if you can stay present when you're getting hit, you don't gap in the same way, and it doesn't stick. I mean, think about it just in terms of, there's a real big difference between somebody saying, okay, I'm going to punch you in the stomach, and you get to prepare for them to punch you in the stomach, and someone just, you're walking down the street, and as someone passes by you, they just sucker punch you in the gut, that one's going to knock you down, and the other one, you're going to be fine. And it's because there's something about being able to mentally prepare yourself for pain, essentially, that happens. And so a big part of what Tai Chi is doing is you don't want the other guy to have that time to go, oh, I'm about to get hit, and so, like, for example, if you're pulling your fist back, doing this like big motion to show what you're about to do, to telegraph your next movement, the other guy can prepare for it, where if it just comes out of nowhere, they don't have the time to prepare for it. So there's again that deceptive quality to it.
The sense of wonder is created.
The phrase from Wang Shujing was, you only hit a defenseless person.
Right, there it is.
You only hit them when they're not able to defend themselves.
That's the Tai Chi ideal.
Yeah. All right,
good talking to you.
Hey folks, hope you enjoyed the episode. Thanks for listening. Just a quick reminder, check out the Patreon for the extended episode as well as bonus episodes to go along with each of the regular episodes. We also have interviews. We recently posted an interview with our good friend Alan Peatfield, which is quite informative. Again, Happy New Year. Thanks for listening. Take care of yourselves and be well.